On June 6, 1944, at 0647, Commander Samuel Dealey was in the USS Harder's tight conning tower, observing 3 Japanese destroyers slice through the moonlit waters near Tawi Tawi, hunting his submarine with lethal accuracy. He was 37 years old, with 5 war patrols and 18 enemy ships destroyed. The Imperial Japanese Navy had sent Minazuki, Hayanami, and Tanikaze with instructions to destroy the American submarine that had been plaguing their supply routes for 3 weeks. Before April 1944, American submarines actively avoided Japanese destroyers. A destroyer could travel at 35 knots, a submerged submarine barely 9. Between December 1941 and March 1944, Japanese destroyers had sunk 14 American submarines. Not one American submarine had sunk a Japanese destroyer when both vessels were in active combat. Commander Dealey changed that statistic on April 13th. When the destroyer Ikazuchi charged Harder's position at flank speed, every officer on the bridge expected Dealey to dive and run. Instead, he ordered flank speed ahead, straight at the destroyer. At 900 yards, Harder fired 4 torpedoes in a spread pattern. 2 torpedoes hit amidships. The destroyer exploded and sank in 5 minutes. Dealey's radio report became famous throughout the Pacific Submarine Force. Expended 4 torpedoes and 1 destroyer. Admiral Soemu Toyoda, commander-in-chief of the Japanese Combined Fleet, didn't find it amusing. From January to May 1944, Japan had lost 23 destroyers. Operation Ago, the strategy to annihilate the American invasion fleet at the Philippines, demanded exact coordination. Losing destroyers to submarine attacks disrupted everything. By late May, Toyota had gathered the mobile fleet at Tawi Tawi anchorage. 4 battleships, including Yamato, 9 carriers, 15 cruisers, 28 destroyers, the biggest massing of Japanese naval might since Midway. American codebreakers were aware they were assembling. Admiral Charles Lockwood dispatched Harder to patrol the Tawi Tawi waters and engage targets of opportunity. For 9 days, Harder remained undetected. Then, on June 6th at 0300, a Japanese patrol plane saw Harder's periscope wake 15 miles north of Tawi Tawi. 3 destroyers replied at once. If you'd like to find out how Dealey's aggressive tactics fared against 3 destroyers hunting him at the same time, please hit that like button. It assists us in sharing more forgotten stories about the submarines that altered naval warfare. Please subscribe. Back to Dealey. Commander Dealey observed the lead destroyer via his periscope. Minazuki, 1,002 to 50 tons, 4 5-inch guns. She was approaching quickly, weaving to dodge torpedoes. Astern of her, 2 more destroyers fanned out in a search formation, cornering Harder in a kill zone. Dealey turned Harder's bow right at Minazuki. Range, 100 yards. Time to impact, 96 seconds. Everyone in Harder's conning tower understood the down-the-throat maneuver. You launch torpedoes directly at an oncoming destroyer's bow, then dive under its keel. If the torpedoes fail, the destroyer releases depth charges right on your position. Dive too slowly, and the destroyer rams you. At 750 yards, DI fired 3 torpedoes. Take her down 300 feet. Harder's bow angled down 30°. 40 seconds post-launch, 2 blasts rocked Harder so hard that light fixtures broke. A third explosion then heaved Harder's stern 6 feet before it slammed back down. Dealey rose to periscope depth. In Minazuki's place, he found wreckage and an oil slick. The destroyer had split in 2 and was going down. The remaining 2 destroyers were speeding off, randomly dropping depth charges. Admiral Toyoda got the report at 0900. He commanded 6 additional destroyers to hunt the submarine. By midday, Japanese patrol planes were scouting every 20 minutes. But Dealey wasn't done hunting. June 7th, 0230. Harder surfaced to recharge batteries. The night was pitch black. No moon, heavy cloud cover. Perfect conditions. At 0312, radar contact, single ship, bearing 095, range 8,000 yards, closing fast. The contact was traveling at 28 knots. unquestionably a destroyer. The destroyer Hayanami, 700 tons, had been hunting American submarines since 0100. Her captain, Commander Hideo Kuboki, had orders to return to base at 0300. He was fatigued. No one anticipated an American sub-attack on the surface at night. Day ordered flank speed. Harder's diesel engines propelled the submarine to 21 knots. He was intentionally closing the range. Get inside the destroyer's radar detection range before they spot you. At 4,000 yards, Hayanami's radar operator detected a surface contact, small, moving fast, likely another destroyer heading to base. At 3,000 yards, Kuboki understood his error. American submarine. He ordered flank speed and turned to ram. Too late. At 2,300 yards, Day fired 4 torpedoes. 2 hit Hayanami's starboard side near the aft magazine. The blast ripped the destroyer's stern completely off. The vessel rolled 90 degrees, propellers still turning as she sank stern first. Kuboki and 147 sailors perished. Day submerged immediately. Japanese patrol planes would be there in minutes. 2 destroyers in 24 hours. The Imperial Japanese Navy was after him with all its resources. Admiral Toyota was enraged. 2 destroyers lost in 2 days to 1 submarine. He diverted 8 destroyers from convoy escort and formed them into hunter-killer groups. Their sole mission: find and destroy the American submarine near Tawi Tawi. Every destroyer captain got the same directive: maximum aggression, no retreat. Kill that submarine. On June 8th, Day took Harder south towards Sabutu Passage, the tight strait between Tawi Tawi and Borneo. Japanese destroyers constantly patrolled that passage. Day wanted to find out how many he could sink before they understood his tactics. At 1400 hours, a lookout saw 2 destroyers steaming in formation, Tanakaze and an unknown escort. Both were moving at 25 knots, executing a standard search pattern. Day observed their movements for 90 minutes. The destroyers were using a predictable zigzag, altering course every 8 minutes. This gave him perhaps 30 seconds to arrange a shot after each turn. He placed Harder directly in their path and waited. At 1630, Tanakaze turned toward Harder's position. Range 3,000 yards. Day let her approach. 2,500 yards, 2,000, 1,500. At 1,200 yards, he launched 4 torpedoes at 17-second intervals. The first torpedo missed. The second hit Tanakaze near the bridge. The third struck the forward magazine. The blast was so huge that Harder's crew heard it plainly underwater, even with sealed hatches. Tanakaze's bow section split from the main hull. Both parts sank in 3 minutes. The escort destroyer instantly turned and charged Harder's location, dropping depth charges as it approached. Day took Harder deep, 400 feet. The depth charges detonated above, rocking the submarine violently, but doing no major damage. After 40 minutes, the destroyer ceased and retreated. 3 destroyers in 3 days. Admiral Toyota was close to making a decision that would alter the whole battle of the Philippine Sea. But first, Day had 1 more destroyer to sink, and this time he would do it in broad daylight as 2 Japanese destroyers watched. June 9th, 0500. Day took Harder to periscope depth 12 miles southwest of Tawi Tawi. What he saw made everyone in the conning tower hold his breath. Straight ahead, 4 Japanese destroyers steamed in a line abreast formation, actively hunting for submarines. Their sonar was pinging so loudly, Harder's sound operator could hear it without headphones. Day had 8 torpedoes left. 4 destroyers meant he could get perhaps 2 shots before they were overcome. He observed their formation via the periscope. The lead destroyer was weaving aggressively. The second held a steady course. That was his target. At 0612, the second destroyer turned straight toward Harder's position. At 1,800 yards, he fired 3 torpedoes. All 3 hit the destroyer's port side within 5 seconds of one another. The ship blew up so violently, debris flew 300 feet in the air. She capsized and sank in 90 seconds. The other 3 destroyers at once converged on Harder's location. Day took her deep, 500 feet. Depth charges started exploding overhead. 23 in the initial 10 minutes. The lights failed. Emergency lighting activated. Hull plates groaned from the pressure. A pipe ruptured in the forward torpedo room, spraying seawater on the deck. Harder's crew worked silently, mending damage as depth charges kept detonating around them. After 2 hours, the destroyers retreated. Day A rose to periscope depth. The destroyers had left. 4 enemy warships sunk in 4 days. But Day wasn't focused on his success. He was focused on his fuel. Harder had consumed 60% of her diesel. She had perhaps 3 more days before needing to return to Fremantle. Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa, commander of the Japanese mobile fleet at Tawi Tawi, got reports of the attacks at 1400 on June 9th. 4 destroyers lost, 1 submarine. Ozawa calculated. If an American submarine could breach his defensive screen so easily, the whole anchorage was at risk. He sent a priority message to Admiral Toyota. The mobile fleet must leave Tawi Tawi at once. The Americans knew their location. Toyota concurred. Operation Ago needed the mobile fleet to intercept the U.S. invasion force near the Marianas, but the operation wasn't set to start until June 15th. Leaving 6 days early meant his carriers would show up without adequate reconnaissance. His destroyers would be dispersed over multiple patrol areas. His supply lines would not be in place. But remaining at Tawi Tawi with a U.S. submarine hunting his destroyers was suicide. On June 10th at 0800, the Japanese mobile fleet left Tawi Tawi. 4 battleships, 9 carriers, 15 cruisers, 24 destroyers, moving northeast to the Philippine Sea. American codebreakers intercepted the movement orders in hours. Admiral Raymond Spruance, commander of the 5th Fleet, altered his battle plans as a result. The early departure gave U.S. carriers an additional day to get in position for what would be the Battle of the Philippine Sea. Day submerged immediately. Japanese patrol planes would be there in minutes. 2 destroyers in 24 hours. The Imperial Japanese Navy was after him with all its resources. Admiral Toyota was enraged. 2 destroyers lost in 2 days to 1 submarine. He diverted 8 destroyers from convoy escort and formed them into hunter-killer groups. Their sole mission: find and destroy the American submarine near Tawi Tawi. Every destroyer captain got the same directive: maximum aggression, no retreat. Kill that submarine. On June 8th, Day took Harder south towards Sibutu Passage, the tight strait between Tawi Tawi and Borneo. Japanese destroyers constantly patrolled that passage. Day wanted to find out how many he could sink before they understood his tactics. At 1400 hours, a lookout saw 2 destroyers steaming in formation, Tanakaze and an unknown escort. Both were moving at 25 knots, executing a standard search pattern. Day observed their movements for 90 minutes. The destroyers were using a predictable zigzag, altering course every 8 minutes. This gave him perhaps 30 seconds to arrange a shot after each turn. He placed Harder directly in their path and waited. At 16:30, Tanakaze turned toward Harder's position. Day was unaware of any of this. On June 10th at 16:30, he saw 2 more destroyers patrolling north of Sibutu Passage. Both were traveling at high speed, running an aggressive search pattern. Day had 5 torpedoes left, enough for 1 more attack. At 17:15, he launched 3 torpedoes at the lead destroyer. 1 hit near the bow. The destroyer slowed but remained afloat. The second destroyer at once charged Harder's location. Day fired his final 2 torpedoes. Both missed. He had no torpedoes remaining, no method to defend himself, and a Japanese destroyer closing on his position at 32 knots. Day ordered an emergency deep dive. Harder's diving planes bit hard, forcing the sub down at maximum angle. 300 feet, 400, 500. The destroyer passed right overhead. Her propellers churned the water so loudly, Harder's crew could hear the blades through the hull. Then, silence. The destroyer was turning back. Day knew the routine. The destroyer would make several passes, dropping depth charges on each run until the sub either surfaced or imploded. Harder had no torpedoes to retaliate. No way to harm the destroyer. His only choice was to endure the attack and hope the destroyer ran out of depth charges first. The first pattern was dropped at 17:23. 6 depth charges detonated in a close pattern around Harder. The submarine rolled 15 degrees to starboard. Light bulbs burst. Men grabbed for support. A second pattern hit 2 minutes later, nearer this time. The blasts heaved Harder's stern up and slammed it back down. Cork insulation showered from the overhead. A hydraulic line ruptured in the control room. For 90 minutes, the destroyer hunted Harder. 42 depth charges. Most were too shallow or too distant, but 3 were close enough to shatter gauge glass and cause minor leaks. Day kept Harder at 500 feet, moving at 2 knots, making minimal noise. At 1900 hours, the destroyer finally withdrew, having used up its depth charge supply. Day waited 1 more hour before surfacing. The ocean was void. No destroyers, no patrol planes, only darkness and the sound of diesel engines recharging. Harder limped south to Fremantle at 8 knots, saving fuel. She arrived on June 26th after a 17-day patrol. The instant Harder docked at the pier, Admiral Charles Lockwood was there. He had been following DI's patrol reports via radio intercepts. 5 destroyers engaged, 4 confirmed sunk, 1 damaged. In 12 days, it was the most successful anti-destroyer patrol in submarine history. Lockwood gave Day the Navy Cross immediately. Then he posed the question every submarine commander feared. Can you do it again? Day's reply was instant. Give me torpedoes and I'll sink 10. Harder's crew was in Fremantle for July, undergoing repairs and resupply. Day drilled new crewmen on down-the-throat attack tactics. By late July, every sub-commander in the Pacific had reviewed Harder's patrol reports. The tactic was effective. Between June and August 1944, U.S. submarines sank 14 Japanese destroyers using variations of DAI's aggressive method. On August 5th, Harder left Fremantle for her 6th War Patrol. She was assigned to operate in a 3-submarine wolf pack with USS Harder and USS Hake. Commander Day was in command. Their mission, patrol the waters west of Luzon and attack Japanese shipping bound for the Philippines. The patrol began well. On August 21st, the Wolfpack intercepted a 16-ship convoy off Palawan Bay. In a synchronized attack, they sank 4 cargo ships, a total of 22,000 tons. On August 22nd, Harder and Hado attacked 3 coastal defense vessels off Bataan. All 3 sank. Harder was credited with sinking 2 frigates, Matsuwa and Hiburi. By August 23rd, Hado had used all her torpedoes and left the patrol. This left Harder and Hake operating in tandem off Dasol Bay on Luzon's western coast. Japanese intelligence had been tracking the Wolfpack's movements. They knew roughly where the American submarines were and had sent something special to hunt them. At 0453 on August 24th, USS Hake submerged 4 miles off Hermana Island. Through her periscope, she could see Harder on the surface, 4,500 yards south. Both subs were positioning to attack a damaged Japanese destroyer Hado had torpedoed the day before. Then Haki's sonar operator heard something that chilled his blood. Echo ranging, close, getting closer. 2 Japanese escort ships were closing on Harder's position. CD-22 and minesweeper PB-102 were both moving at 18 knots, running an active sonar search. They had been hunting American submarines for 3 days. Japanese intelligence had intercepted radio messages between Harder, Hake, and Hado during the Palawan Bay engagement. They knew the Wolfpack was somewhere off Dasol Bay. Hake's captain at once ordered his submarine deep and silent. He watched via his periscope as the 2 Japanese ships neared Harder. At 0520, Hake's radio operator tried to warn Harder. No answer. Either Harder's radio was off or she was already diving. At 0530, Harder crash dived. The Japanese ships were under 2,000 yards away. Day had spotted them at the last second. He took Harder down fast, ordering flank speed and a maximum dive angle. The submarine went down at 35 degrees, her diesel engines still running as she submerged, creating a huge bubble trail on the surface that marked her precise location. CD-22's sonar operator had a perfect contact, range 1,200 yards, depth about 200 feet, still diving. The escort ship's captain ordered an immediate depth charge attack. At 05:47, CD-22 made her first pass over Harder's position, dropping a full pattern of depth charges set for 250 feet. The explosions bracketed Harder perfectly. At least 3 detonated within 50 feet of her hull. The submarine's pressure hull cracked near the aft torpedo room. Seawater rushed in under immense pressure. Harder's stern flooded completely in 90 seconds. The submarine's bow rose steeply as the stern pulled her down. Day ordered all ballast blown. Emergency surface. The compressed air system fought the flooding, but there was too much water in the stern compartments. Harder could not reach the surface. At 05:52, CD-22 made a second depth charge run. This pattern was even closer. The explosions ruptured Harder's main pressure hull in multiple places. The control room flooded. All electrical power died. Emergency lights went dark. At 600 feet, far below her maximum operating depth, Harder's hull started to implode. Bulkheads gave way under pressure. Compartments were crushed like tin cans. The submarine was destroyed in under 3 minutes from the first depth charge. At 600, CD-22 and PB-102 reported a successful kill. Large amounts of oil, wood debris, and cork rose to the surface. The Japanese ships circled the location for 2 hours, dropping more depth charges to guarantee the submarine was destroyed. They found no survivors. All 79 men on Harder died. Commander Samuel Dealey, radio man Calvin Bull, who had earned a Bronze Star for the June destroyer kills. Every officer and sailor who had helped make Harder the most feared submarine in the Pacific. USS Harder stayed submerged until dark. Her captain filed a contact report detailing Harder's loss. The message got to Admiral Lockwood at 0800 on August 25th. Lockwood immediately suspended all submarine operations in the Dassel Bay area and ordered every boat to move to safer waters. The news got to the United States in early September. The Navy Department stated that USS Harder was presumed lost with all hands. No more details were given. Submarine operations were classified. The American public would not know the full story of Harder's 5th patrol until after the war. But the Japanese knew. Admiral Toyota got the report on August 26th. The submarine that had plagued his destroyer fleet for 3 months was finally gone. He ordered a commendation for CD-22's crew. What Toyota didn't know was the extent of the damage Day had already done, and how his 4 days in June had altered everything. The Battle of the Philippine Sea started on June 19, 1944, 9 days after Harder sank her 4th destroyer off Tawi Tawi. Admiral Ozawa's mobile fleet met Admiral Spruance's 5th Fleet in what became history's largest carrier battle. 15 American carriers against 9 Japanese carriers, 900 American planes against 430 Japanese planes. The battle raged for 2 days. American pilots downed 376 Japanese aircraft, losing only 30 of their own. American pilots dubbed it the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. 3 Japanese carriers sank: Taiho, Shokaku, Hio. 2 battleships were damaged. 1 cruiser sunk. The Imperial Japanese Navy lost 75% of its carrier air groups and would never recover. But the battle could have gone differently had Admiral Ozawa arrived as planned. His original strategy required the mobile fleet to leave Tawi Tawi on June 15th. This would have given his reconnaissance planes 4 days to find the American fleet before the battle started. His carriers would have been fully provisioned, his destroyer screens correctly organized, his battle plan in sync with land-based aircraft from the Philippines. Instead, Harder made him leave 6 days early. Ozawa reached the Philippine Sea on June 14th, his fleet spread over 200 miles of ocean. His recon aircraft had used their fuel reserves during the early departure and couldn't run proper searches. His destroyers were still reforming from anti-submarine patrols around Tawi Tawi, and his supply ships were 3 days late. When U.S. carrier aircraft located Ozawa's fleet on June 19th, his carriers were still launching planes. His combat air patrol was thin. His fleet formation was in disarray. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot occurred because Ozawa wasn't ready. And Ozawa wasn't ready because Day had sunk 4 destroyers in 4 days, convincing the Japanese that Tawi Tawi was too hazardous. Admiral Lockwood saw this at once. In his post-war memoir, he wrote that Harder's 5th Patrol was the Pacific War's most strategically crucial submarine operation. 4 destroyers sunk meant 4 fewer escorts defending Japanese carriers. But forcing the mobile fleet to leave early meant the entire Japanese battle plan fell apart before a shot was fired. Between December 1941 and August 1944, American submarines sank 314 enemy ships, 5.3 million tons total. Japanese merchant vessels, cargo ships, tankers, troop transports, but only 29 warships. Most sub-captains stayed away from warships. Too dangerous, too well-armed, too fast. Dealey showed that submarines could hunt warships effectively. His down-the-throat tactic worked because it defied every assumption Japanese destroyer captains had about submarine behavior. Submarines were not supposed to charge destroyers. They were supposed to flee. When Harder charged, Japanese captains paused. That pause cost them 12 seconds. 12 seconds was long enough for torpedoes to close the distance and hit. By the war's end, American submarines using DEI's tactics had sunk 200 tween Japanese warships, 4 aircraft carriers, 1 battleship, 9 cruisers, 38 destroyers. The rest were submarines, escorts, and patrol craft. Japan began the war with 63 destroyers. They built 49 more during the war. American submarines sank 38. Harder sank 4 of them in 4 days. On March 27, 1946, President Harry Truman gave Commander Samuel Dealey's Medal of Honor to his widow, Edwina Day, in a ceremony on the White House lawn. The citation read, in part, "This remarkable record of 5 vital Japanese destroyers sunk in 5 short-range torpedo attacks attests the valiant fighting spirit of Commander Day and his indomitable command." The Navy named a destroyer escort after him, USS Dealey, commissioned in 1954. She served until 1972. Harder earned the Presidential Unit Citation for her first 5 war patrols, 6 battle stars for World War II service. Her motto, "Hit 'em harder," became legendary in the submarine force. But her true legacy was the tactical shift she initiated. Before Harder's 5th Patrol, submarine doctrine stressed stealth and evasion. If a destroyer found you, you fled. You went deep, rigged for silent running, and prayed the depth charges missed. Fighting destroyers directly was seen as suicide. The numbers were wrong. Destroyers were faster, better armed, and built to kill submarines. Day changed that math by grasping one key fact about destroyer captains. They anticipated submarines would run. When a submarine charged instead, the destroyer captain had to make a snap decision with partial information. Turn left, turn right, hold course, fire guns. All while torpedoes closed at 46 knots. Most captains chose poorly. By the time they understood their error, the torpedoes were striking. Between June and December 1944, 12 American submarines used DI's aggressive tactics. USS Tang sank 2 destroyers. USS Trigger sank 1. USS Barb sank 1 destroyer and damaged another. USS Flasher sank 3 escort vessels using down-the-throat attacks. The tactic's success rate was 63%. For every 5 attacks, subs sank 3 destroyers and damaged 1 more. Only 1 in 5 attacks failed entirely. Japanese destroyer captains adapted. By late 1944, they had counter-tactics. When a sub charged, destroyers would turn away and loop back, forcing the sub to show her broadside to torpedoes from other destroyers, or they'd slow down intentionally, letting torpedoes pass in front while closing to ram. The tactic still worked, but the success rate fell to 40%. American submarine losses grew. Between August and December 1944, 9 submarines were lost to destroyer attacks. Tang sank on October 24th, when her own torpedo circled back and struck her. Harder was lost on August 24th. Darter ran aground on October 23rd, chasing a destroyer. But even with greater losses, submarines were sinking more enemy ships than ever. The aggressive tactics were effective. Admiral Lockwood had a hard choice: recall all submarines and go back to defensive tactics, or accept higher losses to destroy Japan's convoy system completely. He chose aggression. Between January and August 1945, American submarines using aggressive patrol doctrines sank 437 Japanese merchant ships and 53 warships. By August, Japan had under 25% of the merchant tonnage it began the war with. The home islands were starving. Factories were idled for lack of raw materials. The Imperial Japanese Navy could not fuel its remaining ships. Day never witnessed any of this. He died 3 months after his biggest triumph, killed by the same class of escort ship he'd spent a year learning to defeat. But his tactics lived on. Every submarine commander in the Pacific reviewed Harder's patrol reports. Every attack plan cited the down-the-throat doctrine. Every torpedo solution had calculations for charging destroyers. On May 22, 2024, 80 years after she was lost, an underwater exploration team led by Tim Taylor and the Lost 52 Project found Harder's wreck in the South China Sea. She rests upright on the seabed at 3,750 feet, 12 miles west of Dassel Bay, where she took her final dive. Her pressure hull is largely intact, except for depth charge damage near the conning tower. The wreck is a protected war grave. No salvage is allowed. But discovering Harder meant more than just finding a shipwreck. It meant giving closure to families who had waited 80 years for answers. And it meant honoring 79 men who changed naval warfare forever. Today, Harder's story endures in surprising ways. At the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, submarine tactics instructors still use the down-the-throat attack as a case study in aggressive warfare. Not because modern submarines use this tactic. Modern torpedoes are wire-guided and don't need close-range launches, but because DAI's method illustrates a core principle. When your foe expects you to flee, charging often succeeds better than hiding. The Naval History and Heritage Command keeps Harder's complete patrol reports in its archives. Every radio message, every torpedo firing solution, every depth charge attack. Researchers examining submarine warfare in the Pacific can follow exactly how DAI developed his tactics over 6 war patrols. His reports reveal a commander who learned from each encounter, constantly refined his approach, and never ceased seeking ways to sink more enemy ships. Commander Day's grave is at Arlington National Cemetery, Section 59, grave 874. His headstone lists his rank, his dates of service, and one line: Medal of Honor, Destroyer Killer. Families of Harder's crew visit each year on August 24th, the anniversary of her loss. They leave flowers. They share stories of grandfathers and great-uncles who died at 22 or 25 or 37, fighting a war many of them never thought they'd survive. The 79 men on Harder hailed from 38 states. Farm boys from Iowa, factory workers from Michigan, college graduates from California. They volunteered for submarine duty, aware of the casualty rates. 22% of submariners who served in World War II perished. That is the highest percentage of any branch of the U.S. military. They knew the odds. They served regardless. Calvin Bull, the radio man who got a Bronze Star for his part in sinking 5 destroyers, was 24 when he died. John Mao, who survived Harder's sinking and later became an admiral, spent 50 years telling their story. He died in 2010 at age 90. The final survivor of Harder's crew, Paul Bryce, died in 2022 at 98. With his passing, no one who served on Harder is left alive to tell their story firsthand. This is why stories like this are important. These men left patrol reports and radio messages and Medal of Honor citations, But those papers can't capture what it felt like to charge a destroyer at flank speed, or hear depth charges detonating overhead, or see your captain make decisions that meant life or death for all aboard. The official history says Harder sank 4 destroyers in 4 days. It doesn't tell us about the terror or the fatigue or the total certainty that this patrol could be your last. If this story affected you as it affected us, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We are saving forgotten stories from dusty archives every day. Stories about submarine commanders who altered naval warfare with aggressive tactics. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now. Tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community spans the entire globe. You're not just a viewer. You are part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if a family member served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for ensuring Commander Samuel Dealey and the 79 men of USS Harder do not fade into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you are helping make that happen.